Hi, I'm Father Joel and welcome to Pilgrim Priest. I'm grateful to all of our mission partners and supporters, especially recent patrons David, Sharon, and Bill. They went over to patreon.com/pilgrimpriest and just signed up. Thank you for your support and thank you for listening. God bless. The second book in the Bible, the book of Exodus, is the book that's dedicated to telling the story of Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. In fact, the first two books of the Bible are a great read, and I highly recommend it. Then you get to Leviticus, and you should skip ahead. So in the book of Exodus, the Israelites have been slaves in Egypt, and then God comes and through Moses works these plagues on the Egyptians, which force Pharaoh's hand, which prove that the God of the Israelites, these poor slaves, is more powerful than all the gods of the Egyptians put together. And so then they're able to let my people go, he says, and they get free and they leave. And they leave Egypt, and most of the area around Egypt that's not the Nile River is desert. So as they're out in the desert and they start to starve. And they say what we hear in our first reading, "Would that the Lord had killed us as we sat by our flesh pots and ate our fill of bread in Egypt." In other words, they were pretty well-fed slaves. They were slaves, but they had plenty to eat. Brothers and sisters, whether you realize it or not, we are well-fed slaves. As modern Americans, we think we have lots of freedom. We think we can do whatever we want. I get to be my own master. Isn't that great? But what ends up happening is we end up becoming enslaved by our own passions. There's lots of food to eat, and so before you know it, it's been an hour and I haven't eaten. Man, there's got to be something in the cupboard. We become slaves to these desires. We become slaves to our entertainments, to our constantly needing to be somehow entertained. We become slaves to our distractions. We become slaves to our busyness, always needing to be busy all the time. We become slaves to the treadmill of making money and being successful. I think, man, I want a good life. I need to be successful to have a good life. And so I end up getting on this treadmill of earning money and getting in debt and trying to get one more thing because that, I'm sure, is going to lead to success and happiness. We become slaves to public opinion. I want others to think well of me and end up pursuing their attention. And it's never enough because someone can always say something that's not nice to me. I become slaves to what other people think of me. We become well-fed slaves. Jesus wants us to be truly free, and he wants us to realize that our deepest desires actually point to him. Let me say that again. Beneath the desire for food and money and success and a happy life, there's this desire for communion. There's a desire to be loved. We desire to be seen, to feel known and heard and understood. We desire security. We desire a successful, a happy life. And what we don't realize is that Jesus is actually the fulfillment of these deeper desires. That he comes to give us communion with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, to welcome us into God's family. And from that place of communion, we can find true security. We can find true life. We can find lasting and meaningful peace. It is in Jesus that we find these things. So we come to receive the bread of life. We come here today to be fed by Jesus. And the problem is, we often don't find those hungers satisfied. We find it was a nice time in church, or maybe it was hot and Father talked too long, and I couldn't hear a whole lot. And the Mass, the Eucharist, it doesn't seem to satisfy. The thing that's missing is that we're still trying to be the center of our own life. Instead of trying to grab this or that thing, now I'm trying to grab this thing from the church. Like, we remain consumers. And the satisfaction that comes from Jesus is the satisfaction that comes not from taking Jesus and walking away, but from entering into communion with Jesus, to giving my life to Him, to allowing Him to be the Lord, allowing Him to be the Master. It's when I put myself obediently under the Father, when I give myself to Jesus, it's then that I receive that fullness, that I am allowed to be full, completely full. Consumers have everything, but we don't have love, because it's the one thing you can't buy. And in order to do it, you have to give yourself. And since we're in such a mood of taking stuff from people, even when we try to fall in love, even when we make love, it's what can I get from you? How can you fulfill me? And I continue to be the center of that. I don't realize that I need to give myself away in order to truly find myself. And that's why Jesus gives Himself to us first. He wants us to give ourselves to Him, but He realizes that He has to start. And so He gives Himself to us in the Eucharist so that we will receive the gift, realize how precious we are in Jesus' eyes, and then make a gift of ourselves back to Him. That's the dynamic, is gratefully open to receiving the love of God, and then from that place of abundance, then being able to give myself to God. Of course, that is always a fear that I will lose myself if I give myself away. But ironically, it's only when we give ourselves away that we truly find ourselves. And that is the paradox that we find in today's gospel. When I try to be the master, I wind up becoming a slave. But when I allow Jesus to be the master, I find that I am truly free. So is it going to be hotter in a stadium during the game or after the game? No, it'll be hotter after the game because all the fans have left.